where we help people make more meaningful relationships in both their personal and professional life. Hi, I'm Coach Lee Hopkins. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I want to welcome you to the Engaged Employee Podcast. Our mission is to emphasize the relationship between the employee and the workplace with the goal of enhancing engagement levels to create a more productive and satisfying work environment. While many organizations strive to create a more engaging atmosphere, they often miss the mark by forcing connection with big team building events like axe throwing or escape rooms. Those activities only leave employees with a short-lived sense of belonging. Organizations may also try smaller and more suffocating events like happy hours or group birthday celebrations that their employees feel obligated to attend. As a social connections and business culture coach, I've found that to create a stable, engaged, and productive workforce, there needs to be a shift in focus from mandatory fun and manufactured connection towards building trust and authentic conversation. Join me and a guest as we dive into social wellness strategies for the individual employee, techniques for developing interpersonal relationships with coworkers, and even some approaches for leaders to enrich the overall organizational culture. The Engaged Employee Podcast starts now. Hi, I'm Coach Lee, and today my guest is Cassie Spencer. Cassie Spencer is a career coach and a podcast host. I was a guest on the podcast too. Pretty awesome podcast. Um, she has a background within higher education, and she has worked in career and professional development offices on college campuses, in addition to supporting more than 800 clients through her career coaching practice. Helping others make their next career move is at the core of what Cassie does. I'm so delighted to have her today. And our conversation today will be focused on interpersonal relationships between coworkers and colleagues. Cassie, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you now. It's like I was on your podcast, now you're on my podcast, and
Yes.
it's just a happenstance.
Yes. A happenstance, full circle moment. I love it.
So, Cassie, you are a career coach. I am curious about what that is and how did you get into it? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, of course. I like to describe career coaches really like any other coach. They are a person to help, guide, and support individuals throughout aspects of their career. So a lot of the work that I do does center around job searching, preparing materials for a job search. So that could be a resume, a cover letter, optimizing or creating a LinkedIn profile. But it's also some of the other behind the scenes work that goes into our careers. So gaining that clarity in terms of what you want to be doing, or gaining clarity in terms of the pivots you want to make later on in your career. Could be more of the practical applications, preparing for an interview and really practicing and learning how to articulate your skills and experience. And ultimately, as a career coach, I see myself as the person who can help kind of put the puzzle pieces together and connect the dots for someone else. So that's kind of a description on career coaching. And then in terms of how I got into it, compared to a lot of career coaches, I came into career coaching very early on in my own career. I was actually an undergraduate student meeting with a career coach on my college campus, trying to navigate my own decisions regarding my major and what internships I wanted to do, and feeling very lost in that process as I was preparing to graduate. And it was through multiple conversations with my career coach that I kind of had that light bulb aha moment of like, wait a second, you get paid to do this? And the career coach I was meeting with was like, yep, I do. And I was like, tell me everything. I need to know. And I very quickly realized that I already had a knack for writing. I was editing all of my friends' resumes and cover letters, anyways. I liked a little bit of the gamification of job searching. And from there, I went to graduate school. I studied higher education and student affairs with a focus on career development.
Wow.
And then from there, worked, as you said in that wonderful intro, worked in career services offices on college campuses, and have continued to work with private clients, a good number of them over the last 8.5 years or so.
Wow, that is a remarkable story because, we go to college to find our careers, and it just happened the way you found your career was very, very interesting.
Yes.
And definitely with a career guidance coach or a career coach, and
Mhm.
it just turns out that all the strengths that you had were there for it. So that's really fantastic. I am so glad to know that it's possible for people to find their careers like that, a very unconventional way. So I imagine when you help people find their careers, you really help them understand that it could be anywhere. So can you just walk us through a little bit of, how I would find my career if I was looking for it? How would you help me do that?
Yeah, this is such a great question, and like you said, we can find our careers in so many different ways. And so I really do like to start by talking to individuals about what are their passions, what are their interests, what are the things that they have enjoyed doing, whether in school, at work, through different hobbies and other experiences, so that we can start to really look at what are the themes. And I think that's a big element to our careers, is thinking about the themes. If you are someone that loves talking to people and being around people and working with people and being creative, that's going to be a really different conversation and path that we go down, versus if you're someone who really loves to work autonomously and to kind of tinker with things and to problem solve in this way and has a very analytical mindset. And then on the top of all of that, there's also the other elements of just like what is important to you as an individual. For some people, making a lot of money is really important. And for some people, having a really big impact is really important. For some people, their flexibility is really important with their life and having that balance. And for some people, it's a combination of all of those things and many other things. And so, as I said before, kind of finding the ways to connect those dots and identify those themes can help put us on a path throughout that coaching to really identify like what is a good fit within
Mhm.
that's important to you.
Absolutely. What I like that you pointed out that making a lot of money is important to some people because it really is. And
Yeah.
maybe we shouldn't hide that. Maybe we should really focus on those things that are really going to bring us joy. And I think, from my own coaching, and I stress that to my clients, focus on the things that are going to bring you joy and excitement or are important to you in these moments and go explore and discover those things. And you may discover that being around people is something that's very important to you, as it relates to connecting with others. That's my whole thing. I love to be around people and have these deep meaningful conversations and connections with others. And so, I wonder, as we're working in our careers and we're wanting to connect with other people, what would you recommend for people who want to be in a space like that and connecting with coworkers? Because this podcast essentially is really about helping creating this engaging atmosphere. What am I looking for in places? Maybe share some things that could be a good thing or maybe not so much when I'm looking for a career.
Hmm. Yeah. I think when you're really focused on being around people and having that engagement, this is again where you need to be thinking about what is important to you and what are the types of engagements that you thrive in. For some people, it is that like they want to be working on projects with people in very collaborative environments. And for some people, like I think I'm a good example of this, I like to work with people, but I also like working remotely. And I feel like I really thrive kind of having that flexibility in my life. So, knowing what that balance is for you and what that level of connection looks like, I think is important from just a foundational level. And then there are some other things in terms of kind of those like good things to look for. When it comes to connection, we hear a lot about like the toxic workplaces and what that can look like. And so really being mindful of when you're interviewing with a company or networking with people who might work at a company that you're interested in, starting to get a gauge of what those norms are at the organization. And these can be kind of simple things like, is it a norm that if it's in person, people eat lunch together? Or do they eat lunch separately? Is it a norm that there are regular opportunities for people to interact, whether you're in person or remote? What is that interaction like? A lot of companies use Slack channels and they have spaces where people can share like funny pictures or can bond over, hiking and other activities that they like. And so trying to get a sense of those norms, I think, can help you as an individual assess like, are these kind of the red flags, green flags for me? Because it is going to be different for every person.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love the idea of making sure that you look for those things that you want within the company and don't forget about how important they are. The
Mhm.
little things that can be really important, they stack up. And I think in your career coaching, is that something that you remind people of when they're looking for their jobs? Don't, because they may come to you and they say, Cassie, I want to make a boatload of money. I don't want to work for anybody who's paying me less than six digits the year, so maybe even $200,000. I This is what I want. I demand it, but then
Yeah.
they might be absolutely miserable because they missed the one or two things. So, how do you help them really understand what's important? What is the process?
Yeah, great question. I think the process includes first identifying what are those top priorities, right?
Hmm.
Where does that kind of sit on the list? And then putting a number to it, like you said, because someone could say, like, my top goal is to make a lot of money. And my question is always like, what is that number? It's the same thing if someone says, I just want to be comfortable. Great. What's that
What
number?
is
Like,
that?
we live in
Hmm.
a world where we have to put numbers to it. So really identifying that number and then also developing that list. I always say to people, if I could wave a magic wand and give you the perfect job, what would it look like? And so many people never think about this. They're kind of like, oh,
Yeah,
and they hesitate. And
yeah,
so really, I think part of the process is allowing yourself, giving yourself permission to dream a little bit. If you could wave a magic wand and have that perfect job, and it could be $500,000 for one day of work and whatever else, like, great, let's start there. We can then work back of like what's maybe not super practical and kind of
right.
work into a more realistic lens. But starting from that point, and then I like to go to the opposite realm. What are the absolute non negotiables? So, what are the things that you will not accept a job if it doesn't have X, Y, or Z? So, that
Right.
could be the bottom line. Like, I will not accept a job under 100,000. 200 would be great, though. I
Aha.
will not accept a job that doesn't have a certain benefit, a certain flexibility, or maybe some of these other cultural elements. Maybe from a past work experience, like, I don't like a company that wants me on Slack all the time and sharing pictures of my dog. Great, put
Yeah.
that on the non negotiable list. Maybe that's something you love. You can take these things from our other experiences and from the conversations that you're hopefully having with people throughout interviewing and networking to help kind of determine some of those elements.
Yes. So I understand from your coaching, you also provide a customizable package for people. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you. I do aim as a career coach to provide customized packages. It's something that's really important to me. I feel strongly that our careers are so unique to us. And as we've talked about today, they're so unique to
Yeah.
our wants, our needs, our skills, that I really approach career coaching from that customized lens. So, to basically every client that I work with, it is a customized package looking at what are the elements that you need to work on, that you want to work on, and how can I support that? So for some people it could be 3 or 4 calls that are very Q&A conversational style to gain that clarity, identify non-negotiables, and develop a job search plan. And for some people it's maybe a combination of that along with those more tangible items like updating a resume, preparing for an interview, optimizing your LinkedIn, and kind of anywhere in between with all of that as well.
Right. So with the service, it sounds really, really helpful. Of course, we're all different people. We all have different needs. My question for you is when should I reach out to you? When should I wait until after I've been fired, or should I wait until I just feel I'm fed up with my job and I don't know what else to do? When is the best time to reach out to you?
Hmm. I would say ideally when you start to have that little inkling of like, maybe it's time for a change, or that starting to be like, "Ugh, I'm getting more and more frustrated with my job, I would say is a great time. If you can recognize that earlier, the earlier the better. I've been saying a lot, even though we're still in the beginning ish half of the year, if you're thinking it might be time for a change this year, the sooner you can meet with a coach, the better. It at least puts you in that place to be prepared.
Mhm.
And I think that's always better. We don't have to do everything all at once, but we can at least get those conversations going.
Absolutely. And I just thought of something that it doesn't mean that if you're frustrated with your job, it doesn't mean that you're going to leave the company overall, right? Have you
Right.
had an experience where someone just needed a different position at the job?
Yeah, that happens all the time. I often work with individuals who are really frustrated or fed up with their job. And they say this all the time, like, I hate my job. And then we talk about it, and it's like they don't actually hate their job. They hate something else that's happening. Maybe it's a really challenging manager, or maybe there are other things happening kind of outside of their control. Maybe that company's merging, or they're having a rough kind of season with profits and all of that. And so, in those times too, just like you said, it doesn't always mean, or just because you're having that inkling, that you need to abandon ship and
Right.
find a new career path. But I think one of the biggest benefits of all forms of coaching is having that person that you can bounce ideas off of, and really just have a sounding board to help evaluate and kind of identify what's happening, what are some strategies that we can try, and then taking the next step from there.
Absolutely. Cassie, you've been really, really helpful giving us tips after tips and really actionable steps and things that we can do. So I'm so glad that you came on to share your expertise with us. Can you tell them where they can find you?
Of course, yes. Thanks so much for having me. People can find me on LinkedIn. You can search my name, Cassie Spencer, and I should come up. I'm also on Instagram and a few other social media platforms at Career Coach Cassie. And then I also host a podcast, Happenstance, which you can find on Apple and Spotify.
All right. And it's a wonderful podcast. If you haven't listened to it, go listen to it because you're going to get some more insight from Cassie herself, along with a few guests like me, but plenty of other guests. So thank you
Yes.
so much, Cassie. I'll have all this information for you in the show notes. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you again, Cassie, for joining us,
Yes.
and we will see you again next time. And there you have it, another insightful episode of the Engaged Employee Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the deep dive into the world of employee engagement, leadership, and workplace dynamics. The Engaged Employee Podcast is brought to you by the Patterns of Possibility, where we help people make more meaningful relationships in both their personal and professional life. Before we wrap up, we want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our incredible guests and, of course, our loyal listeners. Your support keeps us motivated to bring you valuable content each week. If you found today's discussion thought-provoking and want to learn more about how we can help you or your organization make more meaningful relationships, go to patternsofpossibility.com and book a friendly conversation with me. Or you can email me your questions at patternsofpossibility@gmail.com. Stay connected with us and engage with fellow listeners by following the Patterns of Possibility on LinkedIn. You can also catch us on YouTube. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell to stay in the loop. And if you prefer the audio version, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Your support means the world to us, and by subscribing, you'll never miss an episode. Thank you for being a part of our journey to create workplaces where passion meets productivity. Until next time, I'm Coach Lee. Stay engaged, stay inspired.